now, but Kelly is already saying you. So, are you ready to go? Yes, you have a timer as usual because you're professional now.
Yes, of course.
So enjoy these 50 minutes and go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from the lunch break. Hope you had a lovely time. So I'm Anna, and today I'll be presenting to you the Immersion project that I carried out in the Kaikai nonprofit organization. The title of the project was called Building the Foundation for the Development of Innovative Communication Strategies for Environmental Awareness. So higher concentrations of carbon dioxide are known to not only influence global climate, but they also affect ocean chemistry on a molecular level. Here is a diagram showing how ocean acidification occurs, where it basically results in a decrease of free carbonate ions. And carbonate ions are essential building blocks for calcification to occur in organisms such as coral reefs. Therefore, we can see that ocean acidification threatens these organisms a lot, and public awareness on this threat has been shown to be very, very low. The Acid Reefs project was a project that was led by Dr. Laetitia Hedouin from the CRIO, and it was aiming to understand the responses of coral reefs to ocean acidification through an integrated approach. And a part of this approach was mandated to Kaikai, which was the development of communication tools. So let me first tell you a little bit about Kaikai. This is a nonprofit that was first started in 2009 by marine scientists, and they work to provide a link between scientists and anyone interested in the majestic marine world. They do this with several different activities that include conferences. They also carry out workshops and also art exhibitions using their sea creature portraits. So in the scope of the Acid Reefs project, they developed and distributed a survey testing the perception of coral reef threats among the French population. The survey was built in 4 different assessments. So 4 different assessments. The first one tested the knowledge that the people had regarding coral reefs, as well as their threats. The second evaluated the risk perception they perceived. And the third one evaluated the extent to which the respondent included coral reefs in their connected representation of themselves. The fourth assessment was the willingness, which evaluated the involvement of the respondent in acting toward a behavioral change. The first 3 assessments have already been analyzed by a previous MARRES student, and the fourth assessment, the analysis of the fourth assessment was the main aim for this project. So this assessment was built in 2 different questions. First, we had a guided question where 8 individual proposed actions were asked to be classified either as mandatory for reducing coral reef threats and or acceptable in terms of whether the respondent was willing to apply the measure. The second question of the assessment was an open question where respondents were asked to cite any additional measures that they wanted to. These were also classified as mandatory and acceptable. So the analysis of the willingness assessment was set up to answer the question, does willingness depend on personal characteristics? The survey was filled out by a total of 1,025 different respondents who were representative of the larger French population, and 2 of these personal characteristics were assessed in my report and in this presentation in more detail. The first one was age. As you can see here, it consisted of 5 different age groups, ranging from 16 years old until 65 and over. And the second characteristic was profession, in terms of whether the respondent had a profession that was connected to the environmental field or whether it was not. The methodology for this project can be divided into 3 different sections. The first one includes the guided question with the 8 proposed actions. The second part consists of the cited measures from the open question, which were subsorted into 7 different categories of actions. And third is also around the open question, where the cited measures were divided by whether they were collective actions or individual actions. And for all of these 3 steps, they followed the following 3 steps. Sorry. So they first began with the calculation of the respondent proportions who classified the measures. Second, the data was visualized using plots. And third, the significance of the relationships was tested using Pearson's chi-square tests. So here's what the resulting plot looked like for the classification of the 8 proposed actions in terms of age. Here we can see the proportion depicted from 0 to 1 for each of the age groups in terms of whether they found the measure mandatory or acceptable. So let's take an example to explain a little more. For example, let's look at reducing waste. It's the purple bubble. We can see here that the purple bubbles are very much on the same level throughout all of the age groups. Therefore, we can see that there is no influence that age had on the classification. However, when we compare it to, for example, with public transport, which is the brown one, we can see here that the acceptability toward using public transport differs from age group, and it is also influenced by age on a significant level with a confidence interval of 5%. The Pearson chi-square values that were, the p-values that were significant are also listed here, so we can see that there was a link with 5 of the actions. We also assessed the difference in between looking at how many people classified a measure mandatory versus acceptable. And here we found a significant difference in reducing internet use. When we look at about how the 8 proposed actions were classified in terms of the professional connection to the environmental field, here we can see the non-environmental workers and the environmental workers. We can also see the 7 different measures had significant influences from profession. Again, when we looked at mandatory versus acceptable, we saw that reducing internet use provided a significant difference. When we look at section 2, which had the cited measures of the open question divided into 7 different categories, the categories are listed over here, and the categories were consumption, exploitation, pollution, transport, tourism, sensibilization, and politics. And from the graph, again, this follows the same order with the proportion listed from 0 to 1 with the age groups. We can see that there was one significant link found where age impacted the recognition toward modifying consumption patterns. And when we looked at profession, this was a little interesting because the open question was only answered by 113 people. And of those people, 50% corresponded to people who were working in the environmental field. Therefore, we can conclude that the open question wasn't representative of the whole French population. There were also no significant links found for profession. As you can see, there are no p-values listed on the top of the graph. However, when we looked at mandatory versus accepted measures for both age and profession for this assessment, we saw that age presented a significant difference with sensibilization and politics, while profession only had a significant difference between politics. And moving on to the third part, the cited measures, as I already previously mentioned, were sorted also by whether they were collective actions or individual. And again, we have the plot of the results where no significant influences were identified from age. Similarly, profession revealed no significant differences. However, when we did look at mandatory versus accepted measures for both of the 2 characteristics, we identified a significant difference in the amount of people who were willing to, who found collective actions mandatory versus who were willing to apply these collective actions. So for the age analysis, we could see that age is significantly influencing both the awareness and the willingness to act. As 16 to 34-year-olds were shown to have the highest awareness and as well as the willingness for measures such as using public transport, as well as using a bicycle. They also showed that age impacted how often the citation frequency of measures associated with modifying consumption patterns was cited. Therefore, we can see that this is a trend that's also followed by in the patterns that are apparent in the modern world, where there is a climate change generation gap that has been identified, where younger generations exhibit higher levels of receptiveness toward ocean issues than older generations. This opposite trend, however, was visible in one action, which was the acceptance toward using an electric car. And the explanation behind this is probably due to the fact that electric cars are quite pricey, as well as they pose a certain exploitative effect on natural resources. So all in all, we can also say that all age groups exhibited a lack of willingness toward reducing internet use, as well as increasing outreach and political intervention and collective actions. For reducing internet use, we expect that this change is because of the growing needs of using internet in day-to-day lives, and for increasing outreach and political intervention. I was estimating that this is probably due to the fact that the respondents had a lack of ability to act on such a level. However, for collective actions, here we can see that there must be more persuasion carried out with the public so that they will be more willing to act on this level. From the profession analyses, we can see that having a professional that was connected to the environmental field significantly increased their willingness as well as the awareness of toward using public transport, reducing flights, as well as reducing meat consumption. It also affected the acceptability toward using a bicycle. Interestingly, in this analysis, we found that the amount of people who were willing to reduce their meat consumption was higher than the amount who thought it a mandatory measure for the protection of coral reefs. Therefore, here we can identify a knowledge gap where people are not fully aware of the effect that these kinds of actions may have for the protection of coral reefs. And similarly to age, we could see that profession affects how there is a lack of willingness toward reducing internet use, as well as political interventions and collective actions, as mentioned for age. So to go further, we also compared our results with the survey's first assessment, which was knowledge. This assessment incorporated an open question where people were able to cite any coral reefs that they recognize, coral reef threats that they recognize. And from this, we could calculate the citation frequency of ocean acidification as a coral reef threat. And there was a significant influence found from both age and profession on the citation frequency of ocean acidification as a threat. Therefore, we can see that carrying out these personal characteristic analysis, we can really pinpoint the understandings that are lacking and which are not in the French public. And these are very important in establishing the development of new communication strategies, which are targeting, which is the main aim for KaiKai's future projects. So to conclude, we determined that age and profession both constitute a variable which significantly affect the respondents' willingness to act for change. To bring it back to the hypothesis, we could see that willingness is dependent on personal characteristics. And being younger or having a profession linked to the environmental field significantly also increased the awareness as well as the willingness. We also concluded that there was a high demand for political interventions as well as for collective actions. However, the ability to act on such a level or the willingness to act on such a level was very low in comparison. So what we have found out with this project is that by grouping the public, we can identify the specific understanding gaps that are current in the population, which are essential for setting the foundation for future communication strategies in order to have the largest reach and to raise awareness on ocean acidification. I would like to thank my two supervisors and the KaiKai team for allowing me to partake in this beautiful adventure. Also, thank you to the MARRES team, as well as the panelists and all the listeners today. Thank you very much, and please feel free to ask me any questions.
Congratulations, Anna. Thank you for your time management. So, it's time for you. Who wants to start with questions? You can control the
Go. Yes, thank you, Britta.
For your results, is there anything that surprised you that you didn't expect? I mean, for some patterns such as public transport, I guess not that much of a surprise, but maybe there are other factors that you found really surprising that you didn't expect.
So I think there were a lot of results that really surprised me, because I was aware of the fact that, of course, the younger generation would be maybe more aware of the issues. However, I didn't really see that it also would affect the willingness to act, because the older generations were less willing to act significantly also. So that was something that really surprised me, for example. And also the fact that also environmentalists didn't recognize the effect of reducing meat consumption. However, they were willing to do it. This was, it's the knowledge gap even with them, because, reducing meat consumption really is a very effective way to act. Yes.
Well done, Anna. You have a age gap on what was it called? It was the global climate change age gap. I should go back to one of your slides.
Climate change generation gap. Yes.
Generation gap. What is that age group? Where's that age gap take place?
Oof. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't remember exact age group, but I know that it signified the basically 16 to 34-year-olds was the younger age group.
Environmentally conscious. Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
To 35.
Approximately, yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Martin, just one more question from the
Yeah, okay.
Just wondering if, well, now that you have like data to support that, there is indeed, because we say a lot that there is a generational gap, but like your study actually scientifically proves that, which I think is very cool. I don't know if maybe if Kamikaze is planning to do like maybe more projects focusing on this, or are they gonna try to work more towards the younger generation?
So the main aim for them is to just develop new communication strategies that could be implemented for any public, but they should be targeting for the public. But they are not only going to be, of course, aiming their outreach for one generation, it's going to be inclusive. So if they're going to be carrying out these new communication strategies, there will be some for younger people, some for older people, some for environmentalists, so it will be really for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Congrats.
Maybe we can go to Martin.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna, for this presentation. It's really interesting. I have a few questions, but the first one is, can you explain how did you choose your panel of people, of different ages and different professions? How did it work? How did you do it? Like concretely, like, yeah. How did you do this?
So thank you. That's a very good question. Luckily, I didn't have to do it at all, because it was done before by the previous student, because the first 3 assessments follow the exact same analysis type where the personal characteristics were used. And the previous student carried out a very extensive study of how to make sure if the population, the respondent population, was fully representative of the greater French population. So it was looked that all of the characteristics are representative.
Okay, great. So it was done before. So you used already. Okay. And I have a second question. So maybe you cannot answer because you didn't interview those people, but I would like to know between the people giving their opinion and the action they have in their life. What's the difference between what they say and what they do? Well, then it's not a question. Maybe you cannot answer this, but I would really appreciate to know if those people saying, okay, I wish not to take a plane, but I take it 10 times a year, so just to see the difference between what they say and the actions they have.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, because in the open question, technically, where they cited their own measures, they also classified them as mandatory and or acceptable. And most of them just classified mandatory actions and weren't willing to accept them. So here we
Okay.
can see that there is a gap of willingness,
Yeah.
even though the recognition is there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, and then maybe we can go back to Lara.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have some questions still on the surveys.
Mhm.
You say that you have 1,000 of survey and that you have a different assessment, so one for willingness, but also on the knowledge, on the perception. So do you have access also on the other data?
Yes.
So you compared also the parameter of the other aspect of the survey with your results.
I did an extensive analysis of the previous analysis first in my project, and I did look over all the significant links that they had. However, I have not fully compiled and compared yet. I think this is something that is going to be for the next project to fully assimilate the data in a way that they can be used for the targeting ways. Like all of the information has been extracted and has been compiled. However, the full analysis of how they implicate each other, that has yet to be done.
Okay, thank you. So I have just a second question on this. In your research question, you were analyzing the difference of investment in function of personal characteristics, and in this case it was age and profession, but did you have also other element of the personal characteristics of the person that were answering to the survey?
Mhm.
Which were these parameters, and have you looked at them?
Yes, so for the whole survey, there were a total of 6 personal characteristics. Other than age and profession, it was based on city size. There were 3 different categories of city size. It was also separated whether the respondent was from mainland France or overseas. This provided a lot of significant links. And also the last one was the distance to the sea that the respondent had. And from all of these characteristics, I chose age and profession because they provided the highest number of significant links. But after those characteristics, the one with the highest amount of significant differences was in terms of mainland and overseas, which mostly are similar to the significant links found here, where the acceptability toward reducing internet use, for example, was significant, and it also affected how people were willing to or were finding collective actions mandatory, for example. But I did carry out all of this analysis too. It was just a lot of results.
Mm-hmm.
So for the report, we just decided to keep them out.
But it was higher in the overseas compared to the willingness, but it was higher.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But something interesting that I did find out was from the previous analysis was that when we looked at rural versus urban residents, the urban residents had a higher connectedness toward ocean issues than rural residents, which for me was surprising, for example.
Alors Lara.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It was great. I have a question, but maybe I missed it. You say that this survey is representative of the population. So do you think it really is, or do you think it's still a bit biased? Because I know it was sent also to laboratories, to people that are actually conscious about the environment or work in this field. So do you think this survey managed to actually remove the bias, or still maybe it's skewed towards environmentalists?
Well, if we look at overall, there was 1,025 respondents, and of those, around 200, a little more, were environmental workers. And if it was compared to the lists of different professions and like percentages of the French population, and they were representative of that, so it didn't go over that level. But it must be acknowledged that this was distributed by scientists mostly toward other people who are connected to the environmental field, even not professionally, even like by having a friend or something. So I do believe that there is a bit of bias to this. And I think that this would be easily just fixed with getting a larger sample size and distributing the survey for a longer time, because it was only available for, I think, 3 months, if I'm not correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I would like to come back on the beginning and the end, so the before. So you just said it's 3 months, opening 3 months. Do you have access to that? Do you remember how it was? Because you're that's almost unique in the area of immersion projects. You are the student number 1, 4, 5.
Technically, I'm the third because the last year student
Yeah,
wasn't doing this
exactly,
project.
that's-
Yeah.
Yes. But it's so multi-years.
Yeah.
So coming back to the survey, can you once again tell us a little bit how it has been delivered to the public and maybe how you would do that differently in the future?
So the first immersion project in Kaikai was basically just the distribution and the development of the survey. And there, the next part was he also carried out, he distributed the survey also, and it was distributed via internet. It was sent to many different people using emails, for example, and it was also presented at some events so that people had access to fill it out, just to have a better variety of people filling out the survey. And for the questions themselves, I tried to read through it. I've looked, but it is fully in French, so it was a little bit difficult for me to understand, but otherwise the layout, it was complicated, but it was built in a very, very smart manner.
And it was in French or in English?
It was in French.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I answered fully.
Yeah, but so how would you do this?
How would I do it
Different
better?
now.
Okay. So I guess I would try to have it open for a longer amount of time to have a higher amount of respondents, because basically 1,000 respondents is kind of like the minimum that you could have to have a better representation. So I would definitely try to have more. And also, for example, in terms of the willingness assessment, as I already mentioned, very few people answered this question, the open question, because it was open. And so the results that I analyzed from there cannot really be representative of the whole population. Therefore, I would maybe not make it open, make it a mandatory question that everyone must fill out to have a better answer selection.
Okay, and so for the future now, after 3-4 years, for students, so 5 years, what's next?
So the next part will be a very interesting project. I'm very excited to also help this be developed, but this will be the part of the developing of the communication material. So this was initially aimed to be the aim of my project. However, we discovered that there was still quite a bit of analysis to do, such as the willingness assessment, which has not been analyzed yet. And so this was put to the side. However, now that this survey has been fully analyzed and all of the information has been taken, we can fully start using all of the information that was gained to actually make targeting strategies that could be implemented.
So the final outcome will be a communication strategy adapted to different public.
Mm-hmm.
What about the science part in it? Do you think about article or?
Yes. So there's an article basically waiting to be published with the results of the survey from the first 3 assessments. It is being processed right now, but depending on what the responses are to this article, whether it is published or not, we will definitely want to create another one, or maybe add to that one to have the willingness results also incorporated into it, but to have them published definitely.
What's the type of journals interesting for you here?
That's a good question. I really don't know.
It's the next one, maybe the next question. Right.
Yes.
Do you want to ask a last question, guys? We're good. Sarah? Martin, maybe?
He's coming.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much.
Anna.
Thank you very much. Ciao! Aitäh, et vaatasid! Oh, she said
Plot twist. Vincent là.
Okay, Martin and everyone online. So we are going on ahead with the next presentation with Vincent Bertrand. Okay. So Martin, oh, you're here. Martin, so I think you know each other a little bit. So because you know each other, Martin, you're not going to be able to assess the work of Vincent because for everyone maybe to know, Martin was the supervisor of Vincent, but of course at the end, you can anyway ask a question, I know, maybe remark to Vincent.
Great. Thank you.
Hold on.
Go, Vincent.
How you doing?
Can you test just it works with the... Okay. So I will remove Martin. I have to keep Martin here so you can see you. Here we go. Do you have a timer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So hello everyone and welcome in my presentation. So today I will present to you my immersion project with Coral Guardian. So this project is born from a shared ambition between Martin Colinoli, the director of Coral Guardian, and myself about raising environmental awareness through art. But why art? So taking a look back in the past of humankind, humans have always tried to represent the environment and the surroundings. So the first artistic representation were cave paintings, where we can see animals like bisons, deers, horses, even moving deers in the Lascaux cave in France, and in the Chauvet cave we can see bears and pumas. And from this form of art to contemporary form of art, we are trying to represent the environment. So George Chuo is a young artist from the UK, which is trying to represent corals shapes through using paper cut techniques. And so he's using vivid colors to represent the corals before the bleaching and pale colors to represent them after the bleaching. But can we use this form of art in our environmental awareness raising? To answer this question, we'll have to define what is art first and then awareness raising. So the definition of art is kind of tricky, as the definition of an artwork is very subjective, can be controversial and even philosophical. But one thing is sure is that the artworks can provoke emotions to people, having potentially a huge impact on them. So then, Sayers stated in 2006 an interesting definition of awareness raising. So, as the process that seeks to inform and educate people about a topic on an issue with the intention of influencing their attitudes, their behavior, and beliefs toward the achievement of a defined goal or purpose. Taking these two definitions, Staples and et al. Stated in 2016 that awareness art could be used in awareness raising to connect people with the environment and ecological systems in new ways, forging the strong bonds between people and the natural world and inspiring them a desire to protect it. So already there are being many tools used. For example, this environmental education camps in Turkmenistan, in Turkey too, where they are using drawings, paintings, sculptings to instill this desire of protecting the nature. So we know that there is a lot of, this is more than necessary nowadays because of the ecosystems and the environment are facing a lot of threats. One of the ecosystem facing threats is coral reef, sorry. And actually, the NGO Coral Guardian is born to face these challenges. So the NGO is founded in 2012 with the objective to help and empower local communities through actions to face the condition of coral reefs. So two projects are important to highlight here. The first in Indonesia, in the Atamin Island, where locals are directly involved in the coral reef restoration. And the second one is in Spain. So this is the project in Indonesia, sorry. And second one is in the south of Spain, in Punta de la Mona, where the rehabilitation and restoration of coral reefs are ongoing in the Med Sea. And this project in Spain is the first experimental project of the Blue Center platform of Coral Guardian, which was created to share and spread their knowledge they have about coral reef restorations. So they have a specific approach of marine conservation using first participatory conservation. So the locals are directly involved in the restoration of the damaged coral reefs. And science, by using the data from the restoration and also the data from scientific research to improve restoration techniques. And then they are also useful to science by providing them data within the 10 years of work they did. And also we have the awareness raising axis through many tools that reach more than 3.8 million people since 2015. So I will not detail all of them, but the two last was the photographic exhibition Coral. So this photographic exhibition is actually telling the story of the project in Indonesia through photos. And the project We Are Coral podcast is a podcast of interviews and coupled with an artistic photographic concept, mixing human and corals. So in this context of these two awareness raising tools, the project is born. So the project was divided in two parts. So the first was the diffusion of the coral exhibition. So the objective was to reach the largest number of people by contacting them and proposing them to host the exhibition. The exhibition was proposed for free of charge, and the diffusion has been done in France and internationally. Then the development of the We Are Coral podcast is the second part of the project. And actually a date was fixed for the launching of the project. And to ensure the launching of the podcast, and funding research has been undertaken. Aside from the project, there is a study that has been done to test the efficiency of the selection process and the contacting method. So the efficiency is defined based on the expectations and the objectives that was in the project. So for the diffusion of the coral exhibition, the expectations was to reach the largest number of people, but that can mean one structure or 20 structure. So the baseline will be at least one structure. And for the development of the We Are Corals podcast, the efficiency will be measured on the needs of fundings to ensure the launching of the project. So the hypothesis was that the selection criteria and means of contact was efficient enough to reach the objective of agreements. So the methodology in question was first for the coral exhibition diffusion, the writing of a presentation dossier with a presentation of the NGO, of the photographers, of the photo, and of the exhibition, and everything was translated in English for the international diffusion. Then we had the selection of potential host structures. So the criteria was were marine-related aquariums and museums, but also museums of natural history, and we took into account the criterion of international diffusion of popularity. And in the emailing, then we had the emailing phases where custom email were wrote and translated in English for the international diffusion again. And we had 4 emailing phases in French and 3 at the international. And meetings were kindly proposed in each emails, and agreement templates were ready to be sent. So in the We Are Corals podcast development part, we have followed the same methodology with the writing of a collaboration dossier, proposal dossier, with the presentation of Coral Guardian, of the artistic concept and the goals of it, the guests, the team, budget, partnership offers, and counterparts. Then we had a selection of the structure also, with the eco-friendly and eco-responsible companies as a criteria, environmentally engaged companies too, and foundations. We had 2 emailing phases, and meetings and agreements were again proposed in each email. So the results of this method was first for the Coral exhibition in France. We contacted 76 structures. On this diagram showing the percentage of positive, negative replies and unanswered emails, you can see that we have 12% of positive replies, 37% of negative replies, and 51% of unanswered email. All these positive emails, these 12% positive replies were coming only from aquariums. And this graph is showing all the replies through all the emailing phases. And actually, all the 9 positive replies have been found during the first emailing phase. So, moving on to the international emailing of the diffusion, 80 structures have been contacted. We had only 4% of positive replies and 76% of unanswered emails. Again, the positive replies were coming only from aquariums, and 2 out of 3 positive replies have been found during the first emailing phase. Then for the development of the We Are Coral podcast, the results of the method is that we contacted 68 structures. We have only 3% of positive replies and 65% of unanswered emails, which 33% of negative replies. On this histogram showing the first and the second mailing with the replies, we have only the 2 positive replies during the first emailing phase. And on this graph, you can see that the replies were kind of dispersed in time for this part of the project. So to discuss a little, so there is also meetings and agreements. So from all the replies that we have, for the Coral exhibition diffusion in France, 11 meetings have been done, and 8 agreements have been then done from this meeting. For the international diffusion, we had only one meeting, and no agreements have been done. And for the development of We Are Corals, we had 2 positive replies, 2 meetings, and 2 agreements. Very effective. So to discuss about these results, so for the diffusion of the Coral exhibition, in France, we had 8 agreements. So the method is quite efficient in France. Regarding at the baseline, we had at least one structures. So we can see that there were a higher percentage of positive replies in France, higher percentage of unanswered emails internationally. We'll come back on that. So what we can see also is that most of the replies were following the sending of emails, so kind of spontaneous. Positive replies, almost all the positive replies were found during the first emailing phase, showing the enthusiasm of people in hosting the exhibition. And then the negative replies were explained by that the structures had already booked exhibition in their structures, a lacking of exhibit space, or a lack of interest in corals. And actually, the criterion of popularity that we set during the international diffusion is kind of discutable because it made us contact very big structures with maybe less time to study the proposal and also overload of emails. And maybe also it will be a good thing to facilitate the international transportation of the exhibition, as it is very expensive, and maybe it was a barrier for the acceptations of the proposals. And we can also propose them to print directly the photos, so they have them as long as they want. And for the real course development, the podcast development, so we had several reviews of the collaboration proposal dossier, but it took a lot of time, 4 months at the end. We had 2 positive replies, which ended in 2 agreements, 2 meetings and 2 agreements. So that's a good thing. But these structures were lacking of funds, so they couldn't participate in the funding of the project. But we established a partnership with them to display the Adopt a Core program on their website, for example. So the replies were more dispersed in time, and the negative replies were coming from a lack of funds again, a lack of interest, or the structures were engaged in other causes than cores. So as a result, the launching of the podcast has been postponed. We have a high percentage of unanswered email again, maybe due to the fact that we were contacting companies that maybe have less time to answer, and maybe overload of emails too. And the criteria we chose was eco-friendly, eco-responsible, and environmentally engaged companies. And we selected maybe 2 little companies with the lack of funds and couldn't participate into the project the way we wanted. And so in conclusions, not enough funds to ensure the launching of the podcast project. So it could be a nice thing to do in the next project to improve. But 2 partnerships have been established at the end. So ensuring the awareness raising mission a little bit more of Coral Guardian. The Coral exhibition has been booked in France until April 2024. So it's ensuring the awareness raising and the diffusion of this exhibition. And actually, we can see on these pictures that that was taken in Biarritz Aquarium from March to October 2022. 170,000 people as visiting the exhibition and potentially taking a look at the exhibition. So it's an humble step for me in the Coral Guardian awareness raising. It's even more a humble step in the global awareness of environmental awareness raising. But thanks to this Immersion project, to Martin Colonnelli, and to the MARRES, I am convinced that one day everyone will be aware about the environment, the threats, and the causes. And I will strive to keep my head above the water to work in marine conservation in that direction. Thank you for this.
Congratulations. So we are going to you guys. Help. Very good.
Thank you first so much for the presentation. It was very interesting. I have 2 little questions. Like, there are people being there, like they're not answering the emails. Did you have like a follow-up process, or like at one point you said, I'm not gonna contact this person anymore? And just from your personal experience, like how do you think we could improve the outreach in these types of projects?
So first, yes, I think we did a monitoring table to follow every steps of the mailing phase and everything. So this was not very random. I didn't mention it in my presentation, but yeah. And I think to improve the outreach, we have to improve the methodology. So in France, it was really adapted, but internationally, not really, because we have no agreements. So maybe we can because we were proposing the structures to even host the already printed photos that were in possession of Core Guardian. But there was also the possibility of printing them, so they could keep them as long as they want and print the number of photos they needed according to their exhibit space. So maybe we can only propose this option, and it will be maybe easier that people will not say it's too expensive to transport and then so maybe it could facilitate the acceptance of the proposal. And for the development of the podcast project, contacting companies were very challenging. It was very challenging. They are very enthusiastic at the first answer, first replies, and then they agree because we had 2 positive replies, 2 meetings, and 2 agreements on the same structures. So and we contacted these structures were lacking of funds. So maybe it will be easier to raise funds by changing the criteria of selection of the companies. So we took eco-friendly, responsible, and environmentally engaged companies. But we can maybe broaden even more the spectrum of this criteria and open it to maybe bigger companies that can help in the funding. But yeah, this criteria were chosen to be aligned with the values of the NGO.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question about the podcast, even if like it didn't work out at the end. Like, what was the podcast supposed to be about? Like, who did you plan to interview?
So
Can you just repeat the question for online?
Oh yeah. So what the question was? What was the podcast project about? So this is one of the 2 parts of the project. So this is a concept, artistic concept of mixing corals and humans to raise awareness about the necessity of corals for humans. And so the interviews that have been made already was made from guests, sea ambassadors like Denis Allemann. I don't know if I can say all the names. Yes, Eric and Adine too. And Alexandra. Yes. Sorry, Alex.
So there are already some episodes.
Yeah. They have already made, but not launched online officially because there is no funds to continue and ensure the project again.
Just a little question. Do you have maybe maybe it's just a thought, maybe it would be good if you could propose maybe to have like an analysis of maybe how these episodes would react, because if these episodes that you have will generate a public, maybe that same public can generate the profits to continue on with the podcast.
That's true. That's a risk also, because if you start to launch the project and diffuse one podcast monthly, if there is a lack of budget within the first year, it will be really hard to stop, to give up the project and say to the people, no, it's not possible. So yeah, the fact in this project was to find the fundings, all the fundings until 2024 before launching the first episode of the project. But yeah, that's a good insight. Yes, Alex.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the photo exhibition that you tried that you tried to work with international exhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you try to contact? And then, like, because you received like negative or maybe unanswered emails, like I just want to know where.
So most of them were found in capital cities internationally, so in every continent. And yeah, the list was really long at the beginning. Then we selected the structures with the popularity, and but yeah.
Yeah, but like, is it more like for example,
a company or like a museum?
Yeah, this was only aquariums and natural history museums and big museums such as the Film Museum, the National Museum in London. Things like this.
Maybe we can go to Sarah and come back to you.
Yes,
Thank you very much, Vincent. It was very interesting.
thank you.
So I have one question about the question of rules about the selection criteria.
Mhm.
You mentioned that maybe by changing the criteria and targeting a more broad public, you can have some more answer. But so exactly what are the suggestions that you made? Which other criteria do you propose other than the environmental awareness of the company?
So yeah, maybe we can look for company who are trying to reach the net zero emission, CO2 emission objective. Maybe we can try to reach companies that are less threatened, that are constituting a minor threats for the environment, but maybe not environmentally. Yes, maybe we can also look at more foundations, because we were looking at foundations, but most of them have an application process which is really long in the time, and so within the time of the immersion project it was really difficult to apply. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. And do you know if in the literature is something that has been already documented, that the fact that you are going to have a very small percentage of answer by email,
Mhm.
and if it's similar to what you get, and if they propose something?
I didn't find any studies who was really looking at the method of contacting people and the selection of the method. So I did it all myself, and I based the criteria also of efficiency myself. But no, I didn't find any clues in the scientific papers, and it would be really helpful. But yes.
Yeah, to use all this amount of work.
Yes.
To secretary. Thank you.
Maybe a question about people who are paying for that.
Which one?
That's my question, actually. Who is paying for that? You're asking museums, aquariums, if they would like to host an exhibition. I guess most of them could be interested, except if they are not interested by corals, you say.
Yeah, there is some.
Or because they have no
Exhibition.
space or no time. But for all of those who would like to do that, do you assume that they pay directly for that, or is there any other mechanism you may have in mind? So, other people you could contact, maybe.
Yes. So, in fact, the exhibition is provided free of charge of everything, and only the transportation is at the charge of the structure.
That exhibition, this one.
Yes, exactly. Yes, this one. And so, yeah, there was another option, which was printing the photos, so they could keep them as long as they want, and like print the number of photos they needed according to their exhibit space. But yeah, it was an investment for them, as it was there were 30 photos.
Yeah, I guess where it's not printed on paper, I guess.
No,
The
it was
artist
3,000
is
euros.
picky, so
It was 3,000 euros to print
3,000.
to print the whole exhibition for themselves.
Okay.
So some of them were like, yeah, prefer to pay the transportation instead.
But it's okay. In this case, it's always the institution exhibiting the exhibition that pays. There is no other possibility to think about a way to finance that.
I don't know.
Okay,
Maybe.
That's an open question.
Yeah.
I have an ideal business model or something.
Yeah, maybe to facilitate even more the acceptance of people, the NGO could pay themselves.
Oh, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the NGO paying for that.
So yeah.
Are you referring like a sponsorship, like?
Something like that.
Mm.
It could be also, you know, the region, the local authorities, or
Municipality.
we will ask Martin. There were more questions, Anna.
Yes, I was just wondering, since you said that this strategy proved to be efficient for French, what would you improve to make it efficient for the international level?
So again, that was a criteria selection. I think the popularity made us. So the popularity was based on online reviews, so a minimal amount of online reviews, and I think it limited the process of looking for a structure to host at the international.
No, I didn't mean that, sorry.
Ah,
I
yes,
meant
sorry.
how to get more answers. Like, what would you improve in the strategy of how you approach them to maybe try to establish more partnerships with them?
Yeah, the first is really the popularity, because when if we contact less popular structures, maybe they will have more time to answer, and they will be less overloaded by emails, and they will have more time. But then maybe the amount of people reached will be less at the end.
Sorry, I didn't.
Well, thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
By the way, I take that as an opportunity to also connect to you, Anna, because there were a lot of people. Maybe I can come back to to that here. A lot of people were saying Mariana, Agatha, Victoire, Kelly, so Mommy. When it started, Vincent, you had some bon courage, some Kelly again, Mariana again, and some congrats, Maya, who's always really interested by all of these works. And Ilaria, attendez, c'est pas fini. Good job for Anna also. And we don't go. So before we end here, maybe we can admit again.
So what did you think about
Thank you.
What did you think about it?
Congratulations, Vincent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have two questions, if I may, but it's not part of the work. It's more something more global. So my two questions. The first one: how did you feel to work on art effects using science? And the second one: is it possible to measure art effects? Yeah, I mean, there is no good answer or bad answer, but I just want to know what you think.
I really enjoyed to work with arts and awareness raising, because I think that art is really a strong mean to raise awareness about in the environment, because of this power of giving emotions to people. And personally, I'm here because of emotions. I've seen a lot of things, but the last things I've seen in my life were two sperm whales. And today I'm here to defend them, protect them in my career. So, yeah, and then to measure, it's really tricky because even for the people reach through the awareness raising of Coral Guardian, we had it was views, spectator of conferences, visitors, but we really don't know really if they, for example, the 175,000 people in Biarritz. They have potentially take a look at the exhibition, but we really don't know about if they, in fact, take a look at the exhibition, and in fact, if they took our message for them, and so it's already tricky to measure awareness raising. So measure heart in awareness raising. Maybe we could measure, I don't know, ask to people by survey the emotions that procures the awareness raising tools. But do you have any idea?
Well, I think there is a difference between awareness raising using science and awareness raising using art, using emotions or facts. And so I think that art explains something that science cannot. That's my opinion. You go deeper in something that cannot be explained. So that's more or less my answer, but it's pretty open. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you. And you did a great job in Coral Guardian. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really, I'm really proud.
I was going to ask you that. Okay, so we'll do a short break and coming back here. So the other session is a little bit late, so I guess you can wait for them and exchange all together really soon. See you. Merci, Martin. You stay with us? Huh?
Yeah. Until 4:30, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. So we take a break. So je viens juste de rentrer sur le document en fait.
Alors, I'm sorry, but we're also live. On est en live, donc je te prends à côté, je t'appelle.
Ok, on s'appelle.
Jean-Martin, are you here around? Not yet. It's not.
Nope, he's there.
He's
Ah, okay.
For the dog.
That's just surprising.
I was waiting for you.
Okay, so we're good to go?
Yes.
You don't mind starting 2 minutes early?
No, it's fine.
Good.
So I just changed them.
Just to make sure, you're going to need that. Okay, so you can switch slides using the arrows. And we're just gonna check that it works. Can you try? Yeah, okay. I will mute Martin. And so you're going to be able to pretty soon, yes. I remove that. You're good?
Yes.
Allez, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you everyone for being here for my Immersion project final presentation, also to the people online. And today I'm going to present you my project with the title Strengthening Alliances for Scientific Research, Assessment and Efficacy of Visibility Tools. So let's start from the introduction. The academic publishing world has changed drastically over the past century. Due to a growing number of traditional venues, electronic archives, and online journals, there was an increase in the number of academic publications. We passed from less than 1 million in 1980 to more than 7 million in 2014. Moreover, in this world of academic publications, also the scientific ones experienced an increase that we can see here in this graph. So we see over the past century an exponential growth of annual number of scientific articles. In this context of scientific publications, there was also an increase of the ones that focus on a multi- and interdisciplinary approach. And we can see it in this graph. So here from 1975 to 2006, we are able to see an increase of papers that include multi in the dashed line and the interdisciplinary approach in the solid line. So let me explain what are multi and interdisciplinarity. And I'm going to use these two small symbols that are quite explicative. So multidisciplinarity implies two disciplines going together to solve a common problem, but then they leave unchanged. While interdisciplinarity really implies two disciplines working together and merging one each other and really taking something from the other. So we're going to focus on interdisciplinarity for this work and why is it important? To answer this question, I'm going to cite Karl Popper that said, we are not students of some subject matter, but students of problems. And problems may cut right across the borders of any subject matter or discipline. So in other words, to solve problems, we need different disciplines coming together. Let's think, for example, of societal challenges that require an integrated approach, for example, climate change. Moreover, interdisciplinarity was associated with a higher research impact and a high number of citations. So in this context, in Université Côte d'Azur, there are two structures that really focus on interdisciplinarity, and they are IROPS and IFR MARRES. The Associated International Laboratory ROPS highlight the collaborations between Université Côte d'Azur and the Scientific Center of Monaco. There are three main axes of research, and these are marine biology, medical biology, and human and social sciences. The IFR MARRES focuses only on marine resources, but from different points of view. Here we can see all the institutions that are part of IFR, and we can see, for example, economy, chemistry, law, mathematics, geography, and others. Overall, the common purpose for these two structures is to produce excellent science that can help tackle societal challenges. So, one way to reach this purpose is by using interdisciplinarity, as I mentioned before, so to strengthen and foster scientific alliances. So the next question is, how can we do that? One way is through visibility, so internal within the teams and the researchers, and external to the general public. To increase visibility, we can use communication actions. These communication actions will increase the visibility, internal and external, depending on the tools that are used. And these eventually will foster and strengthen scientific alliances. This will generate what we can call a virtuous loop that will help us to reach our initial purpose. So in this context, my hypothesis is that if communication is carried out through different platforms and consistently increasing the visibility, then the existing alliances will be strengthened and eventually new ones will be created. To test my hypothesis, I used 2 case studies, ELIAROPS and MARRES, but today I'm just going to focus on ELIAROPS. So I mentioned internal and external visibility. So starting from the internal visibility tools, the first two I'm going to present you are the website and the YouTube videos. So I was writing some articles and publishing some videos. For the website, I was collecting the material and again writing the articles. And for the videos, I wasn't producing them. There was a video maker doing that. But I was translating the scripts from French to English. Then there is some in common methodology between the two tools. So I was publishing the content, I was advertising it by email, and then I was measuring the metrics. For both, I was measuring the views, so we can actually compare it. For the website, I was using Google Analytics, and for the videos, YouTube Studio. Moving on, but still staying in internal visibility tools, I was using an HTML newsletter through a software called Sendinblue. So I was collecting the material, I was designing the emails, and then sending them out through to my mailing list. And I was measuring some metrics. So starting from the unique and total opens, I'm going to give you an example so it's more clear. If me and you open the same email 5 times each, the unique opens is going to count for 2 because we are 2 people. And the total opens is going to account for 10 because the email was opened 10 times. Then I also use the open rate, which is calculated as the number of opens on the number of emails delivered multiplied by 100. The last tool that I used to increase internal visibility was the ELIAROPS Symposium, which is an event that now has been held for 3 years in a row. So I prepared the registration form and I sent it out along with the program of the conference. Then I sent a first reminder after 10 days in order to engage more with the people, and then another one after 1 week. The last tool I'm going to present you is for the external visibility, so I just have one. We participated to Ocean 21, which is an event organized by the municipality of Nice in order to raise awareness about the sea with adults and kids. We specifically prepared 3 workshops for the kids. So I was preparing some supporting material. I was preparing some small cards for the kids to learn and play. Then I helped in setting up the experiments, and we focused on 3 major points that ELIAROPS is studying, so regeneration, fluorescence, and symbiosis, by using Nematostellar rectensis and Anemonia viridis. And then we thought, how can we assess the effectiveness of these experiments, like how we can understand that actually the kids learned something. And so we asked questions before and after the experiments to test how many kids could reply correctly after the workshops. Now I'm going to move on with my results. Given the variability of my methods, I'm going to present the results in the same order, and I'm going to discuss them one by one, and then I will give a general overview. So starting from the results for the website and the videos, we can see on the y-axis the views, and on the x-axis we can see the time for both from February 1st to July 15th. For the videos, the different colors indicate all the videos that I published, that there are 5 in total. The first thing that we can notice is that there are some peaks that are higher than the others. And so I wanted to investigate, and I cross-checked the dates of this peak to the emails that I sent, and actually discovered that all the major peaks correspond to the emails that I was sending. On the other hand, we can also see that during the no communication periods, the views are very low, both for the website, because it's maximum 2.5, and for the videos, it was maximum 3.4. If we focus just on the video, we can see what is called a positive cascade effect. It means that each time I published a new video and there is a big peak, we see some very small peaks. So it means that people were going, watching the video, and also watching some other ones, maybe because they missed them, or maybe because the content was particularly interesting. And this was also being explained in literature. And last, if we want to compare the two, there are 3 emails that I sent in which there was both a link to the article and to a video. And if we compare them, we see that the views for the videos are actually higher than the ones for the website because these y-axes are on different scales. This is 13, this is 10. And so one first indicated guess could be that people are more engaged with videos rather than articles on the website. Moving on to the internal visibility tools, this box plot here shows the difference between unique and total opens. So by definition, we obviously expect more total opens than unique opens, but still this is interesting because I found a significant difference between unique and total opens. So this means that people are particularly engaged with the content and they opening the email several times. Another hypothesis is that they could forward this email to other people. Another important point of this graph is that we notice an outlier. So I really wanted to investigate and to understand which email could have more unique opens and eventually why. And I found out that this was the email in which I was announcing the symposium for the first time. So arrived at this point, I wanted to compare all the emails that I sent over time and to understand if I could identify some trends or preference in the topics of the emails that I was sending. So here on the x-axis, we can see all the emails that I sent, that are 15, and on the y-axis, we can see the open rate. We see some variability, and overall, what we notice is that there is a bar plot that is higher than the others, and again, corresponds to the area of symposium. Given the normality of the data, I performed an ANOVA test, and I found no significant difference between the bar plots. However, it's important to remind that we are in communication, so the p-values have a limited value, we can say, and still this can indicate a greater interest of people in this kind of event. Moving on with the last result, the external visibility tool. I said that I wanted to test kids' knowledge before and after my experiments, and so we can see a great difference between the before and after, with the vast majority of kids replying. Here I put more than 15 because sometimes it's very difficult to count kids. And so we are very happy of that because it means that the kids actually learned. And overall, the greatest, if you can call it, result that we have is that we were already contacted to present for next year, not only for 1 hour, but for 1 entire day. So we're actually really happy. So to give a general overview of what we've seen until now, the website may not be the best tool to engage with the teams, given the low views that we've seen. However, it's important to remind the limitations that Google Analytics has, because it's not so precise, especially if it is used with another software like Sendinblue, and if you have more questions, we can discuss it later. We saw that in the periods in which I was not sending out emails, people were not engaged with the website or with the YouTube channel. So communication is efficient when it's dynamic, so when it's frequent and constant and not sporadic. We saw, thanks to the HTML newsletters, that people are really engaged in in-person events still, and there is plenty of literature on the importance of in-person events for researchers. And lastly, we had a great result with Ocean 21, but still the external visibility is limited. I presented just one tool compared to the 4 that I presented for internal visibility. So what we can do better, what we can do in the future. For the website, the first thing to do for the maybe next intern is to assess the researcher's opinion via surveys in order to overcome the limitations of Google Analytics. Then it's important to keep collecting data via Sendinblue. This was the first year that this tool was used, and it's really great because it provides us with plenty of useful data. And concerning external visibility, there are 3 main things that we can do. First is keep strengthening the link with the municipality of Nice, not only by participating in Ocean 21, but maybe also to the Fête de la Science or Nuit de Chercheurs. And something else that we can do that I actually started, but I didn't present, is to translate the website from French to English in order to reach a broader public, and also to use social media. I started with Instagram and Facebook, but I only have preliminary results. So in conclusion, interdisciplinary research is essential to tackle societal challenges. In this study, I tried different communication tools in order to increase the visibility. However, my initial hypothesis was not fully tested because we really need more time to assess if the alliances are strengthened and are created. But still, this work represents valuable insights on the effectiveness of different communication tools. Lastly, I would like to thank my two supervisors, Paula Full and Eric Rottinger, because they helped me a lot and they accepted the challenge of a non-scientific internship with me. I would like to thank the MARRES team for the opportunity and because it opens my perspectives a lot. Since I have a bit of time, Kalli, Anna, and Agatha for being there in IRCAM with me. It was great. And all of you for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
It's so good to hear that it's really after COVID. So, as you hear, who would like to start with questions?
Yes, go for it.
I was just wondering, because I know that there were some limitations that you faced with getting feedback or kind of getting the engagement, and as it's difficult to approach, as you said, with different platforms. What do you think would be a way that could potentially increase the engagement, if possible?
You talk only about LROps, or you're mentioning also IFR? Okay, because they're different stories.
Yeah.
So the point of LROps is that the collaborations already existed, and then LROps was created really to highlight them. So people are already quite engaged, I would say. An idea was to organize more workshops, like very small workshops to talk about communication, or to every time talk about a specific topic for everyone to exchange. It's true that I faced some challenges, even if people are very involved in LROps, because still to publish, I needed their content. And if people are not replying, I don't get the content. But overall, I think we are on a good track. And also it was proved by the symposium, because we thought that maybe less people could participate this year because it's the third year in a row in which we do it. But actually it was like one person less compared to last year. And the retention rate, so the people that signed up and the ones that came, was like 98%. So with that, we're happy. Then if we talk about IFR matters, there's a whole other story. If you have questions, I'm happy to reply. But yeah, in that case, people are not engaged because there was never an in-person event at the beginning. It was only online. So I guess people really don't feel part of a team, and there are different actions that need to be taken before starting. With LROps, they already felt like they were part of the same teams.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. They're speechless. Yes.
So, for example, with the IFR MARRES team, how would you maybe increase that level of inclusion?
So there are different ideas. The first thing that needs to be done is definitely to organize this event that was postponed so many times. So this is the first thing. For the next Inter, what we thought as well was to make the intern go to each lab, like, for example, each week. Because for me, the huge problem was that no one was replying to me, but these people actually didn't know who I was and what I wanted to do. And so if they don't know, if they never saw me, it's very difficult to engage with me. So these are the two main things that need to be done. And then after that, we can talk about how to get the content from them. Because at the beginning, I sent a survey to assess their willingness to participate in social media activities to 23 people, but only 3 of them replied, and 2 of them were my supervisors. So there are, yes. But it's good because it gives you the perspective, and like also 2 different case studies. In one case, okay, the people know that they're collaborating. In the other ones, we want to put these people together. How can we do it? So for me, it was good to see the difference.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question, because you mentioned that within the newsletter, like the rate of answer is very low.
what do you think will be the better way to involve people to fill out questionnaire? Maybe like just to open the website, but like how do you think it would be better to engage people?
Could you just repeat the question?
Yes. Are you asking about the survey or about the newsletter?
Everything.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah.
So how to increase the engagement of people and the way they interact with the content? With the newsletter, I think we got very good results. There is a problem that I didn't mention, which is a technical limitation. So last year, the newsletters were sent as a PDF attachment to an email, while this year I really wanted to implement the HTML, which is more effective, but also there is a risk of this email ending up in the spam. So I try to avoid it by using a verified domain, but still I know for sure that some people receive this email in the spam. I discovered at the symposium. So this is something we really need to think about, but it's more like a technical limitation. So this could be one way. And for the internal one. For the external one, I really think we have to start focusing on social media to engage more, because then if we focus on social media, we can also advertise, for example, the LROP symposium, and it can become not only internal, but also external. That would be the ultimate goal. Thank you.
Maybe we could go to Sarah.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your very good presentation. I have several questions. First of all, about the event Ocean 21.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that you measure the effectiveness of the experiment by looking at the knowledge of the
Mhm.
kids. My question is, are there other indicators and other added value that you can bring during these events? Not only the knowledge.
Yeah, I think if we look at like in the perspective of my hypothesis, this is very far for sure. But I think overall the goal of external events is to really engage, make a good impression, and in that case, then it's easier, for example, to interact with the territory, with the municipality, and this could, in a very long term, for example, lead to more fundings, more opportunities. So in this sense, it has a purpose. Then, of course, the knowledge of the kids doesn't directly affect my hypothesis or the visibility. But since the kids were so involved, we obtained the result of being contacted again. So even if indirectly, I think.
Yes. Do you think that in the survey you would like to ask different questions to the kids, not only their knowledge, but maybe their interest in the matter before and after?
Yeah.
Can be also an objective of your activity.
Yeah. I think for next year it will be more structured, because with last year we kind of decided to make the questions like when we were there, thanks to Paula actually. So for next year, since they're going to prepare for one entire day, I think it's nice to have something more structured to test more how this event is effective, for sure.
I have another question about what you mentioned about the internal visibility, the website, the YouTube channel, but actually this way of communication can be also a way to communicate to the external people. So do you know, first of all, if you can measure if some views are coming also from external person, and how to improve it?
Yes, with YouTube you can see how many come, for example, from a link. So I could see how many were coming from Sending Blue, because it was written, and it was the vast majority. It's true that these tools can be used for external visibility, so that's why there was the idea of translating the website to English, and also the YouTube videos would be great to engage with the external public. But to do that, first you need to have a platform in which you advertise them. That's why the social media would be great to really extend, because if you don't first advertise, people are not just gonna end up on YouTube and watching them. Unfortunately, it would be very nice.
Yeah, very clear. Maybe just general question and more picky question. Just I'm curious about your slide 7. You're talking about an open rate. I'm sorry, it's my fault. You can go ahead.
Yes.
And it's just because it's 7.
Mhm.
Slide
sorry,
7.
sorry. Yes.
And so, because you, congratulations really to make the difference between the unique and total opens. So the open rate, when do we say that if you have 100%
Mhm.
of open rate, so you're happy, does it mean that all your emails have been opened? Or does it mean that the number of opens is equal to the number of emails delivered?
If I have 100%, you mean?
Yeah, because I'm not sure, do you take the total or the unique opens?
No, the unique. The unique is really to
Okay.
assess how many people opened it, because for some emails, the mailing list was a bit different. For the symposium, I sent to more people. For other emails, there was
So it means it's not a matter of how many times we can.
no. This is just to assess really how many people open it compared to how many people I sent it to.
Because what I mean here is that so we only focus on the number of people who
Yes.
open once,
Yes.
but maybe we need also the people who are really interested, like maybe some emails are open multiple times because people are really happy to see them multiple times.
But for that, it's a bit difficult to because the number of total opens can be greater of the numbers of delivered. So that's why it's more tricky to calculate, and I wanted to focus more on the open rate of the unique. But for sure, the total open is very interesting. And another indicator that I haven't mentioned, but I used for my report, was how many people click on the link actually. Because this can be also more precise than Google Analytics. It's a bit more complex. Yes. It's just there is a technical factor in Google Analytics and Sendinblue. So using Sendinblue could be more precise actually. That's why I also really wanted to implement it, because Google Analytics many times is not very precise in counting. So it means, do you want me to explain it?
Yeah.
Okay. It means if I just use a normal email, let's say a plain text email, my click for Google Analytics goes from my email to the website and then directly to Google Analytics. Then some things could happen in the meantime. For example, if your connection breaks, if you're using incognito or whatever, this doesn't go to the count. So already it's not so precise. By using Sendinblue, we add another variable, which is first it goes to Sendinblue, then it goes to the website, then it goes to Google. So there are two different points in which something could happen, and these views cannot be counted on Google. In fact, when I was seeing how many people clicked on my links and the link was on the website, I could see higher clicks with Sendinblue than with Google Analytics. So.
That's very interesting.
Also, so talking about the videos, what are the platforms? What are the different ways we can watch a video? Do we have to go on the website to watch the video?
No, it's just on YouTube. So I was advertising it also on the website. So I was posting an article with the link to the video for the people that go on the website so they can find it. And also was directly sending the link to via email.
Okay.
To the YouTube video.
So it means that people were more watching the video directly, not passing by the website?
Yes. And in general, we saw very, very little views on the website. So the first assumption, I think also last year, was that the website is very interesting for people, but in the end, I don't think this is really the best tool to engage with people. And I think the email could be enough if you put enough information, is quicker and
for already the organic audience, the one that you
for the teams.
Do you know how many? So there is an account, profile. I don't know how to say channel, maybe YouTube channel.
Yeah.
For IFR or for LEA, there is a channel.
Yes, it's
that constitutes an audience.
Yeah.
And do you know how many people are already on?
You mean that follow the channel that are subscribed?
Subscribed. I don't have the good word. Yes.
11.
Okay, let's go for it. No, but that's important not to. I didn't know, but I had an idea. So that's true that you have to build that. You have to build on that. So there is two different, I think, types of audience. The one you have, the one that is for free, and well, not really for free, that you have to kept, but which is around. And then there is maybe the next step, which is now that you have materials which are really valuable, as you said, you can build the audience. You can go for it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting for the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's go back to Ocean 21 and to the questions you asked to the kids.
Yes.
I wanted to know what the type of questions more precisely, and so if it was the same at the beginning and at the end.
Yes, it was quite the same. So it was really to assess the knowledge of the kids. So have you ever heard about anemones? Do you know if animals can emit light? Do you know what is regeneration? Can we do it? So people were actually like, for example, saying yes, my scratches, whatever. And then in the end, we were really trying to understand, okay, so what is regeneration? What are anemones? Can actually anemones emit light? And they were raising their hands. So that's why sometimes it was a bit difficult to count all of them, because you participated to Ocean 21, so you know the audience. But it was really, I have to say, I wasn't expecting that, but the kids were extremely involved and curious. And I think also, it was great for them to see the animals and to see the fluorescence. And I will never forget, while showing regeneration in Nematostella, a kid saying, "Ah, ça c'est horrible." So I think she will remember what is regeneration.
Thank you for sharing that, because as Vincent said, we are emotions, and it's great. And I'm terribly sorry to come back to basic questions on metrics, but so you have questions like that. My question was, so you talk about an improvement in their knowledge thanks to the activity, but how did you know that? Did you ask the question before and after to the same kids?
Yeah. It was a class of 23 kids. So at the beginning, we were all together explaining, okay, today we are going to do this. You're going to be divided into 2 groups. Then we asked the questions. We did the experiments, and then in the end, we gathered them all together because it was a class, and we asked them again.
I don't know if you understand what I mean, but as you asked 2 times the same question to the same kids,
yes, you mean
don't you think there is a possible bias? Maybe another possibility to really test not the effect you ask the question first and they remember, but the effect of your workshop.
Yes.
How could we
Yeah.
do that? Do you want me to say again?
You mean that, okay, they're biased because they just have done the experiments?
No, the bias is you ask the question first.
Yes.
So if they remember at the end, if they answer yes correctly at the end, how do you know it's thanks to the quality of the workshop, or because you asked the question first?
But because at the beginning we didn't say the answer, we left them with the doubts.
Okay.
We didn't say, it was an open question. They were saying, yes, I know, no, I don't know. And then in the end they were replying. So there was the mystery.
Okay.
Yes, but of course we can think of other ways to assess. In this case is that we were participating to the event, and then right before we thought, okay, let's try to figure out a way to understand if this is effective and how to have something more to measure.
I'm trying always to apply something designed to everything.
It's,
maybe a random way to ask to only half of the class and before or after.
Yeah, this could be an idea. But yeah, it was really something that we decided on the moment, so not organized. It was already a lot to organize the 3 experiments.
I guess.
To bring the anemones to the...
So now we can give the floor to Martin.
Yes.
Who's online.
No, so it's muted.
You're on mute now, Martin.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Lara, for the presentation. You asked most of the question I was thinking to ask, so...
Sorry, Martin, you will start next presentation.
Yeah, so I had a question more about the scientists, because your title is strengthening alliances for scientific research. So it means there is research involved. So scientists, I would like to know if scientists are involved in the tools. what is their role if they are involved, and how do you measure the capacity of scientists to be able to communicate, or if you need another team to do the mediation, between scientists and the public? And how do you build a team like this? How do you technically do it?
Thank you for the question. So it's concerning the involvement of the scientists, the idea was that they could send me the material and then I was in charge of the communication. That is already a quite difficult step to obtain the material. In some cases, some researchers were more involved than others, but overall, I have to say there was a good response. So even just in telling us, okay, I published an article, or okay, I participated to this event, can you publish it? Many times, there were directly the scientists to contact me to advertise some workshop or some event that or maybe they participated to like some program interview and they wanted to advertise it. So it's also kind of in their interest to do that. Then you had another question. Sorry, there were many.
I was thinking about how do you organize this this diffusion of the visibility tools? How do you technically do it between the scientists and the information you have and the people, the kids or whatever?
Yeah, it was directly, or they were coming directly to me, or mostly to my supervisors, to Paola, because she really has contacts with everyone. And also there is a point that I would like to mention, that people were more keen to reply to her than to me. So it was easier to get information directly from her. So she is the link in the end, between the scientist and me. I have to say, compared to the beginning, towards the end of the internship, I had more and more people contacting me directly. When they saw I was doing, like, the job I was doing, they liked it, they started to contact me more. I think a big flaw, if I can say, or something to improve, that we really need to think is that communication really needs to be continuous, and this internship is only for 4 months. So the idea for the next intern is also to organize more material that can be shared in the meantime between the two internships. Because if not, every time someone starts in March, ends in July, and then again in March and in July. So it's very difficult to give continuity to this. Now there is a video maker that is also more involved. Is a video maker and journalist. So the idea is really to continue this activity and not just to break it for the internships. But this is a great point to touch.
Okay. And is there a scientist checking what you're doing? When you do the tool and when you do all your job to make it easier for the people, is there a check from a scientist that is telling you that this is too easy, or it's too hard, or it's not true?
Yeah, it was mostly done with my supervisor, because it's true that would be great to do it directly with the scientists involved, but it's very difficult sometimes to get replies. People are not always so responsive. So at some point, my supervisor was checking and telling me, okay, this is good, you can change here. And so she was validating my content.
Okay. So scientists are not too involved in communication, right?
They mostly provide the material, but then in the end, they're not so involved for what regards the website. While for the videos, of course, they're very involved, because the video maker was going there with the script, filming. For the videos, there was more work of involvement, because, of course, for an article, a short article is a bit different, but for a video, we really checked many times if the content was okay for everyone. So in that case, yes, there is an involvement, but of course it's so much more work. You can publish less content because it's very long to prepare a video like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So yes, to conclude, you've done an amazing job because I think it was really challenging. It's great, and we need really that type of work in research. Being able to, as I told you before, I will share that again. Being able to like the kids games, but really like whatever you want, like a square in the circle. So a study challenging with it's clearly not with a lot of tangible data into a scientific approach. So great. And also I think a lot of people learned a lot thanks to you and thanks to what you said, Zian. You talked about Ocean 21. I take that as an opportunity, guys, to remind you it's going to be in March.
No, in June.
In June. And yeah, we participated as well. It's amazing as well with kids. And they ask us also to come longer. So they appreciated really all the work we've done.
Really liked it.
So also I like to share that you have, as you can see here, a few people saying, let's go Lara.
Thank you, Tom.
And Ilaria, who is actually hiding the other room so she can watch both presentations.
Yes.
I share, I hope I can.
My boyfriend is really
Boyfriend.
yes, really, because I told him please don't be too extra. So I kept very simple, excellent presentation.
I get that also.
Thank you, I get that.
Students. I don't know if you control it or not, but the Instagram from the Elia Hops.
No.
Congratulates you.
No, it wasn't me. I wasn't doing
And still doing multiple things at the same time. Kelly, who is actually congratulating at the same time, also congratulating. Thank you, Lara.
Thank you, everyone.
We can go so to the last presentation today.
Yes. When you said it for tea,
Can you just check on the keyboard that it works? Yes, okay. Kelly disappeared. Will disappear. And we should go. You have your timer.
I have my timer.
Yes. So we are ready for the last presentation of 2022.
Yes. So welcome everybody. My name is Matilde Drake, and today I will be presenting my Immersion project final report entitled Creating a Framework and Collaborative Activity to Improve Stakeholder Engagement in Mediterranean Macroalgal Restoration. So this is going to follow a typical format, context, methods, results, and discussion. So moving into our context, macroalgal forests are found all over the world in temperate and polar regions, and they're even found here in the Mediterranean. And these are called Cystosera, the algae that we have here. So what is Cystosera? There are forest-forming macroalgae under 3 different genera, Cystosera, Gongolaria, and Araucaria. They reside in mainly rocky intertidal zones, and their 3D structures complexify the underwater landscape, creating a habitat and nursery for many species, among other ecosystem services and functions. So unfortunately, there is a need to restore Cystosera, as 50 to 80% of them have been lost in the Mediterranean. This is due to herbivory from snails, fish, and urchins, trampling, which is when we step on them on the coast, water pollution from heavy metals and wastewater, and additionally coastal construction. And so with restoration, there are many ways that we can increase the success of a restoration, one of which is involving stakeholders. So a stakeholder is anyone involved in or affected by a restoration. And they bring different benefits such as political and financial support, gains in public trust, along with stimulating the blue economy, increasing our knowledge of the site, and all of these aspects work together to increase our rate of success. But unfortunately, in the Mediterranean, we don't see involvement of stakeholders with Sistazera restoration. So we've seen that there's benefits to stakeholders, but so have internationally recognized organizations such as SCR, UNEP, and IUCN, which all call for an increase in stakeholder engagement in restoration in general. And so I'd like to tell you a bit about the organization that I did my internship with, AFRIMED, which is a European funded research project running from 2019 to 2022. They have 11 different associated laboratories across the Med, and they deal with macroalgal forest restoration. So they have two different roles, which are to increase Sistazera knowledge and to improve stakeholder engagement, which are both instrumental to restoration. My role in AFRIMED, my internship concerned both of these aspects, but for today, we're just going to be looking at the stakeholder engagement. So the main aim was to create a restoration framework. And a framework is just a tool that restoration practitioners can use as a guideline for their restoration project. And so when thinking about making this framework, we thought, okay, we need stakeholders in restoration. So how we want to get their valuable insights directly from them to kind of play into this framework. So how do we do that? So we asked the question, what is the most effective way to bring together Mediterranean stakeholders to make informative insights on macroalgal restoration? To answer this question, we wanted to make a collaborative framework to get the ideas of stakeholders directly from them. And I'd just like to note that this project does not have a direct hypothesis, as I'm just creating two different artifacts or tools that people can use. So going into our methods, this follows two parts, our framework and our collaborative activity. So first, to develop the framework, we had to gather information. This framework was largely based on the Gianni et al. Paper, which created a tool for conservation. So we wanted to take this conservation focus and turn it into a restoration focus. To do so, we looked at various sources of literature to establish what are the main focuses, the most important things that need to go into a restoration. And then we also needed to update the aesthetics of this framework as we wanted to disseminate it to a larger audience, not just restorers, but also non-academics, etc. So it needed to be visually appealing. So we gather all of this information. I must say that we is I worked with a working group within AFRIMED. So we took all of these ideas and brainstormed them into different concepts. We drafted a review, which was then sent out to the larger AFRIMED partners and team. And then they gave us back some suggestions, and we worked on this to develop our final result. Now moving on to our collaborative activity. We first needed to, again, consult some literature. So the main piece of literature we looked at was the Biodiversa Stakeholder Engagement Handbook. Biodiversa is very well known and reputable, so we wanted to look there first, and they had some nice guidelines set out for us. Then we needed to choose our method of engagement. So how are we going to get our ideas from our stakeholders? Next, we needed to see how we were going to disseminate this engagement method through the use of a platform. And then we needed to map out our activity. So there are different criteria that go into each of these steps. For choosing our method of engagement, it needed to be easy to use, cover a wide range of topics, be time adaptive and hybrid friendly. Hybrid friendly because a lot of conferences, workshops, etc. are now in this hybrid format or online. Then to choose our platform, it needed to be compatible with our chosen engagement method, be easy to use, host many different users, and be hybrid friendly. And for establishing the layout of our framework, it needed to, the collaborative activity, it needed to be based on our framework, be visually clear, and have clear guidelines. Having clear guidelines and being visually clear is very important, as an activity can fail if it's not clear to your audience what you're trying to do. So the results, again, in this two-part process of framework and activity. So here we have our overall layout of our framework. I also have a little example for you. So if you look on the left here, we can focus on our restoration decision tree. And we can see these different bubbles here in different colors associated to, we can call them zoom outs on the right. So where you have restoration implementation, success evaluation in purple, management in orange, and leave our program in red. And I've highlighted this because due to time purposes, I can only go into so much depth, so we'll look at that one a little bit more. Okay, so for our restoration decision tree, so what are the different ways that we can get to a restoration implementation? I'll give you a few examples. One, we need to assess, is there an existing forest? If there's not, well, then we have to see, okay, was there a historical presence of the forest in this area? If there was no historical presence, we need to assess if the ecosystem conditions are satisfiable for Sister to live there. Then we can move on to restore. Another way to get to restoration would be that we do have an existing forest, but we've assessed that it's not healthy. So we need to look at the different impacts that are affecting our unhealthy forest, see if they're mitigatable, and then move on to restoration. So then once we've restored a site, we can go on to evaluate the success of this. And once we've deemed that it's a successful restoration, we can go on to long-term management of the site. And then leaving program, this would be, you'd have to assess a different site. This can happen if our ecosystem conditions aren't satisfied or the impacts are non-mitigatable. So just briefly for restoration implementation, it's important to consider society and support, competence, finance, and governance. Moving on to our success evaluation, it's really important to have indicators of success. And here we've identified a target population, ecosystem functions and services, and a comparison to reference conditions. Once we have our selection of indicators, we can plan our success evaluation and implement it. So as I've said, it's really important to have clear goals and objectives with measurable indicators, as said by SER. This is because we can't just go and say, okay, I restored a site, look at how good I am, I'm contributing to society. No, we need to say that, okay, was this actually successful? What can we learn from this situation if something went wrong? That's why we need these indicators. So moving on, we have our management, with which we also have important indicators to consider. We've added an evolution in time, conservation status, and threats, and then we need to move on to planning our monitoring and implementing it. And it would be also nice if someone could consider establishing an MPA in the area. So here back to our decision tree, we're brought everything back together, and this will now be the basis for our collaborative activity. So when thinking about our collaborative activity, we chose group brainstorming because it is highly adaptable to time, situations, and topics. It pushes people to think outside the box. Research has shown that it leads to people thinking of ideas that they wouldn't have on their own, and forces them to think of stakeholders that aren't very obvious. And it's also a very well-known method, so it's not very hard to explain. Next, when choosing our platform, we chose the online platform Klaxon. It's an online workshop platform. It's French. And so you just sign up and start creating. It's really just like a blank canvas. So it's very adaptable. The baseline is free, but for a small fee of 20 euros per month, you can host many users. And additionally, since it's online, it's hybrid friendly. So here we have just a general overview of the layout. It looks very zoomed out, but that's because on Klaxon you can zoom into different sections, which is really nice. So here we have 4 different boxes, which correspond to the 4 different sections of our framework. And so when looking at this, we would want to start with one topic and brainstorm some different stakeholder ideas for that stage in restoration, and then move on to the next. So we have a few visual cues, letting people know the order of things, and this can be adapted to how much time you have or what you want to talk about in specifics. And then, so up here we can also see that our framework is here, and we have some written guidelines, but those are just there as a reminder. These should be explained to your audience beforehand. And so just to show a little bit, if you were on Klaxon yourself, how you would make your idea, there's just a big plus button. You'd click on it. You'd be able to make a nice sticky note. You write down your idea, and you're able to move it over into its corresponding topic. So for example, I could say, okay, I think that dive shops can start some citizen science surveys, and this would be useful in understanding forest presence in my area. So that is everything for the methodology behind the activity and the framework. So now let's move on to our discussion. So we saw that it's really important to engage with stakeholders, as projects can fail without them. The collaborative activity can act as a very useful tool to obtain insight. And what I showed you, while it was very focused on the framework that we developed with AfriMed, this is more of a methodology that could be applied to many different types of restoration frameworks in many different situations. And then the established framework has a wide range of potential for increasing the success of Cicizera restoration, as in a lot of these different types of frameworks exist, but they're mainly in terrestrial ecosystems because they've had a lot more time to develop these. Marine restoration is fairly new, so we need more of these types of decision frameworks to help our restorers make informative decisions. And then just to end on some future perspectives, we would want to implement this collaborative activity. I'd be very excited to see that happen in the future. And this framework is now part of a larger manuscript of best practices of Cicizera restoration that's being considered for a special publication of Frontiers in Marine Science. So I'd like to thank everyone, thank my supervisors, and for you all staying for the very last presentation and for your attention.
So, questions?
You go.
Maya's going.
You spoke about the fact that you were in a working group. I was just wondering if you could kind of explain the dynamics there, like if you had shared responsibilities of the same things, or if you kind of all had your own little corners that you worked within.
Yeah, so AfriMed is kind of divided into different divisions, and they have this one aspect which is their I keep saying the screen. I'm sorry. Their business club, which is kind of like where they focus on stakeholders. And the lab that I was in, we focused a lot. My supervisor was one of the co-leaders of this stakeholder, call it section of AfriMed. And so I worked with her team in the lab. And yeah, I was basically given different assignments. I would make up different ideas, brainstorm things, and come back to along with my colleagues, and then come back to my supervisor and say, okay, what do you think of this? I need some feedback. And yeah, that's basically how it went.
Thank you for your presentation, Matilde. It was very nice. I want to ask, you said that in terrestrial ecosystems, this is more developed the restoration in general, and now people start having a look in marine ecosystems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you what attracts them to marine ecosystems? I don't know.
I think
how can you bait them? Tell them, okay, come to the marine ecosystem.
Well, I mean, terrestrial ecosystems just have had a lot more research on them because it's where we live. We can directly see the changes in our ecosystems, and we have those direct impacts. Like, for example, if a forest is being degraded, we can say, oh no, my food supply is going down. Oh no, so people can see that need directly and go in and restore. But for the ocean, it's very difficult to see what's going on, the different processes, and we've only been able to do that more recently. For example, when I was doing the other part of my internship, where we were doing field work, we were in probably this much water, but since we weren't able to we had to manipulate things at the bottom because we were we were creating cages for anti-herbivory. And so one of my colleagues had to wear scuba gear in this much water just so that they could, because you can't manipulate it with just a snorkel. So it makes it 10 times harder to do things underwater than on land.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Martin, so maybe. Martin, last time we stole your questions, so you can go. You're mute.
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Matilde, for the presentation. So I had a question about the stakeholders because I had, it was a bit difficult to represent what are the stakeholders in this field, So can you explain who are they, please?
Yes, of course. So there are many different types of stakeholders that can be implemented in this field. For one, researchers, as there's a lot of methodology that needs to go behind restoration. And then we can have MPA managers, NGOs, government workers that work with policies that might help protect this species. And there's even some maybe not very obvious stakeholders that exist. For example, when I was doing some research, we had to do a population survey on the islands at Lara. And one of those islands is owned by monks. And so you normally can't spend the night there unless you're there for a religious purpose. But we went ahead and contacted them, and they let us stay there. And they were actually really interested in the Cystosera. They were more so, again, focused on the terrestrial aspects of their island, but they were just starting to get to know the marine realm. And so they wanted to know more about Cystosera. So in this case, they didn't know as much about the underwater ecosystem, but local people can have a lot of local knowledge about maybe what impacts are in the area. But yeah, so monks are a stakeholder.
So in stakeholders, you also include companies, for example? Or,
yes,
yeah?
companies, yes. stakeholder is just a very wide term. Companies such as dive shops can be involved.
Yeah. So I think it's important to tell a bit, to give example of the stakeholders. What is it, like to have it in mind. And my second question was about the invasive species. I don't know what you can say about this regarding, restoration, if it's possible or not, and if there is invasive species, it's not possible to restore. It's more about cleaning before, or.
That's a very good question. I know that there are some invasive species of algae, but right now they're more so in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. I think they're coming from the Red Sea, the more tropical ones. They're coming over. I don't have too much knowledge on those invasive species, but I know that there are different species affect Cystozera based on the location that you're in. For example, a lot of people think of maybe herbivory or overgrazing by sea urchins, which is true for many other areas, but in this particular part of the Med, there's herbivorous fish that eat the Cystozera. So that's why some AfriMed experiments, they're trying to make anti-herbivory cages and other things to help with that aspect of restoration.
Okay, thank you.
That answers your question.
Maybe a last one. Can I, Christophe?
Yes.
Thank you. I had a question about the mapping of, because those algae, they are growing fast and then dying fast, and so is there a mapping of the history of those algae to know where it was before and where are the zone to restore? Is it clear what I'm saying?
Yes. So there are different researchers that are trying to build these maps of where Cystozera are located, but unfortunately there's not a lot of historical data that goes back. But these algae aren't just like short-lived, they have pretty long lifespans, and they're very slow growing. For example, one that's maybe this big would take 10 years to grow. So they're there for a long time, but that also means that once we destroy them, it's very difficult for them to return.
Thank you, Matilde.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a lot of questions.
Okay. I'm ready.
Thank you, Matilde. Thank you very much. So I will start from the last one. In your discussion, you showed that there are other collaborative activities that have been carried and that were successful. So can you provide us some example of other activity in other framework, like in restoration of conservation?
I was more so saying that there have been other conceptual frames, not necessarily collaborative activities, but there are different ways that a collaborative activity could be carried out. I know a lot of people will have workshops or just conferences to ask stakeholders direct questions instead of through an activity, or people might send out a general questionnaire or survey, but this would be more very focused. We wouldn't get these maybe more of a group discussion and some answers that we wouldn't think of on our own. You can get like a wide spectrum, wide range of brainstorming.
Thank you. I have another question about the next step. So what you're saying is that you create a framework and an activity in the aim to also make this activity. So Martin already asked some question on the stakeholders, but my question are, on which scale do you plan to make this activity? For instance, when you talk about Cystozera restoration, the actors are coming from which spatial scale? Do you think that it's interesting to have the dators from the whole Mediterranean, or it could be more?
I think it would be really interesting to see people coming from all over the Mediterranean, because it's not just Cistas isn't just country specific, it's all over, and each country has different issues, impacts that might be involved with restoration that vary spatially. And they come from different cultures, different backgrounds, so it would be cool to see their individual input from all over the Med, not just one demographic. And I would want to target, I think a lot of people in research stick to people in research. I think it's hard to get out of this research bubble. So it'd be nice to see some non-academic stakeholders as well, a higher proportion than what is maybe seen regularly.
Do you know which could be the barrier to this wide range of collaborative?
I think that this is a hard question to answer, but I think a lot of papers say, like, oh, it's nice to include stakeholders, but they don't specifically say how or why, or maybe give specific examples. I think that maybe in some cases, people just say that they need stakeholder engagement as a requirement because there's so many calls for it. But I think it would be very nice to just, I don't know, I think a lot of people might be more so focused on just the direct research and not spreading out to and going through with engagement and speaking to people. So.
Thank you. When I asked this question, I was thinking about the language, because
Okay.
in research we were so used to speak English that the stakeholders often do speak in the territorial language, and so it can be a barrier in this exchange if you look at the woman.
I think, yes, that can be a large barrier to it. Because a lot of researchers do speak English, but maybe the stakeholders don't. Maybe in those cases you could bring in an interpreter or something like that.
Can I ask the last question? So you said that your draft, your framework, was sent also to the other members of AFRIMED to get some review. So do you know which were the researcher the most involved in it? Like, are researcher involved in this kind of approach? And
yes.
Did you get a lot of also feedback from it?
Yes, I did. So even the members of the stakeholder aspects of AFRIMED to the business club, they're all researchers, that they take on this role of stakeholder liaison, if I can call it that in a way. So they juggle these two things at once.
When you talk about the business club, I'm sorry to just make sure we understand that, because there is a business club in AFRIMED. So you just say that the people in this business club are researchers?
Not just researchers. The partners of AFRIMED that run the business club are also researchers.
Okay.
But the business club is open to all different types of stakeholders. We had a AFRIMED stakeholder meeting back in May, and so we invited many different people, and we had different demographics. We had researchers, NGOs, governmental agencies, and consultancies as well.
I will come back on this business club aspect, because I find it really interesting. Like that's true. You mentioned something really interesting. Like you talked about grants, research more and more. I don't know if you know that, but it's really interesting. For research grants, you have to cover other aspects than research more and more. That's, I think, a win to connect with society. You may have outreach so for more raising people awareness in general, or this idea of stakeholder engagement. But this is called business club. So does it mean that the goal was really to get the business, to connect with the business world? And if yes, or if no, I don't know, does it work? I mean, like, is there, because you talked about NGO, but you didn't talk really about this business.
Yeah, I think one of the main goals was really to bring in businesses as a business club. But in the meeting, I think there was majority of the demographic is still researchers. I think I remember it was a number of 65% of the people that came to this meeting, which can be considered members of the business club, were researchers.
Okay.
I don't know if that
So
answers your question.
Yeah, so we still need to, it's still required to be developed.
So it's, yeah, it
there's
still
still
needs,
a gap.
there's still a gap that needs to be addressed. And maybe, for example, as Lara was saying, language could be a barrier, as businesses, I mean, throughout the Mediterranean might primarily speak their native language, not English, which...
Do you think it's, to get people from business, English is a problem? Because you see the question coming, maybe the last one, I don't know, we'll see. Like, how do we do to connect with businesses, to connect this research development with businesses?
I think we really need to show to them how restoration impacts them, how it impacts their business. Because if they just know, okay, there's algae that are disappearing, why do I care? You know, they need to know, like humans, unfortunately, we need to know, have a direct link with something. So I think we need to make those associations.
Okay.
That's...
Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Like, okay, I can try to give an example. Sister Zara, one of like the monetary benefits, you could say, on a larger scale, is that while it brings in fish, etc., so it's a habitat, and it makes the area look nicer. So it's more appealing when tourists come. It's more appealing maybe for dive shops to, like the general area will have more diversity, more fish. So it could be important for them.
Actually, that was my question. I will finish maybe again on that. But
Okay.
what are the different ecosystem services that the Sister Zara brings that can be used to connect with businesses? I'm sorry, it's the last one.
I know.
It's my last one, at least.
I think another one is there are potentials with blue carbon, but that is very understudied and pertaining to Sister Zara. I know that there's a lot of blue carbon markets and offsetting that people are trying to look at with really big kelp, but as you know, there's large debates as to whether macroalgae are carbon sink. If they are a carbon sink, that would mean that they need to drop down to the bottom of the ocean. But so I think that could be a potential with Sister Zara as a carbon sink, kind of carbon offsetting for businesses. But that would have to be developed further in the future. I remembered another one. So as we saw in our lab, Sister Zara have a lot of metabolites, and they, as other algae, have some potentials for maybe creams, skincare, etc. So that could be interesting for a business to maybe start this scheme of restoring, but also growing Sister Zara for themselves to use as a product.
Okay. Vincent, do you want to conclude?
Yeah. So, do you think is it applicable to any restoration project like all over the world? Like I was speaking about compliance of stakeholders. Like, is it to participate in this?
Yeah, I think this activity is really it's very open. If you didn't want to follow, it can be just adapted to any framework or type of restoration. So I think, yeah, it could be developed for restoration of coral or different things as well. So.
Okay. I think we're good. So, Martin, you're back here. So thank you a lot, Lara. Just to, what do we have? Like, with no surprise, we have some Let's Go Matilde, Good Luck Matilde. With no surprise, we have it. This one.
Sister Queen.
Of course. But also,
also,
cages for that.
I mentioned carbon offsetting. I don't condone it.
yeah, that's why you're being cautious, really enough, by saying that. So,
I don't like it.
I don't like it.
okay. I think we will agree with Eli saying congratulations. Great job. That's it. Also, thank you a lot, Martin, for having with us this afternoon. And yeah, I think thanks to you guys, we learned a lot. I really appreciate that you guys were here and in the other room also during this afternoon mostly. And I hope that you learned and that you exchanged and you understand the concept. Okay, so Martin, thanks a lot. See you next time. Really soon.
Yeah.
Because you're coming in January for the year 1.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Also, for the people online, bye bye. Also.
Bye bye. Thank you for following us.
Oh, guys, we're the first to finish. No, Crystal says bye bye too, yes, and Alexi is wiping the white. So, guys, you know that we've got bar, partly booked for us, so I don't know if you stay or not, or we have a lot of to drink, I know. But, so did you get the information exactly where you're staying around for us?
Yeah, we're gonna stay. We're not
Maybe
running.
we can join them in Kraken if you want.
Okay.
Sorry, I have the last.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to come?
Is it possible? Yes.
Just make sure you
So pretty much the same. But is it possible, because I had to have my internship agreement redone in French, is it possible by any means to have it coming today?
It's not me who signed it. It's the president of the university.
Okay.
Really,
Alright, okay. When?
I have his number, but I'm not sure I can do that.
Yeah, okay. Is it possible next week or is on vacation?
I do think it's not really for Tuesday.
Okay.
So I don't know, but as I told you before,
yeah, so they uploaded it and then it was put on the MARRES and they want it completely in French, even though it's in French and English, so I had to change. Yeah, but it's the first time because for Marion and for Ludovic, they accepted it.
You never know what can happen.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Christelle will try to do this. Yes. Oui, alors en fait, il y a juste des trucs qui font que certains recordings sont OK, d'autres pas. Le tien? Non, mais je trouve. Oui, c'est pas ligne. Non, le tien, c'est pour ça que tout disparaît. Et ensuite, on les découpe. On voit ce qui peut être fait. Ok, alors du coup, si jamais tu étais entendu, bah ouais. Merci beaucoup.
I pulled it off.
It
was so hard. I was crying. I can't
it's lazy. You change everything.
I'm doing all this.
In perspective, really keep that in mind for whatever happens. Ton astuce is something. But the focus on what works.
The way that you prepare change.
Yeah. Thank you for
That was
helping
very
me
nice.
figure that out because I was.
But sometimes we talked about that and say, but maybe it's okay, congrats really. Because yeah, it was really, really nicely explained. Voilà.
I practiced it so many times. I was in front of my room practicing the walls and couldn't get it. Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice.
Successfully.
It's empty here. Okay, one more comment.
Je croyais que tu voulais l'accrocher quelque part.
Yes, yeah. I'm so stressed right now. I think I'm just gonna drop it. There's nothing I can do, and they told me this morning.
I want
Maybe here?
Yes. Can you take a picture? But this is my phone. No, my phone is gone.
Could you send it to me, please?
Of course.
Ah, je suis toujours live. Ok.
I'm sure you wanna have the also.
Ouais, bizarre, pourtant je suis.
I mean,
We don't have a choice.
Merci.
chairs.
Some
Do
people.
you want a full body shot or half
Yes,
shot?
yes.
Okay.
Il a perdu l'accès internet.
Okay, my last angle is a little difficult to use the chairs. But I'm trying my best here.
C'est bien, j'ai dit 3 fois, statut, pas nice, et elle m'avait dit.
Give me a little
Je suis
more.
toujours live.